Okay, we are back. We are in the groove. We are in the essence of time. As per usual, I am Sineo, and I am grateful, thankful, appreciative to be in this moment, to be present. Alfluent, how are you doing?
I'm I'm living one version of a dream, um, and I still have yet to have a bad day. Um, don't have any easy weeks, but I ran out of bad days, so I'm in a good space. Any day you see me, it's the best day of my life, and Wednesday is a great day for me because I get to be with the lyrical ones. Before we get to our guests, and let me know how you feeling.
Yeah. As we proceed with the week to week growth, I will say that I oftentimes vent, how I feel and how things are, and with this time period reflective of the other me, as I often refer to, the other me, the me without the mask. um I'm kind of like, last week was a conversation that reflected on how much I have to focus on failure, right? How I need to be at peace and come to like grips with that, like really zone in on giving myself to either opening the door to let myself out or burning the door down. And it was funny when we left that conversation, there was a name that was mentioned, and I start asking all these questions to Alfluent. I'm like, yeah, well, who was that guy that R Hooker was talking about? Because I feel like that's like, I need to lean in that direction based off of the conversation we just had. And he was like, yeah, he'll be on. And I thought you was just joking. And I was like, yeah, no, he'll be on next week. I'm like, whatever. Let me go look. And I start reading, and I'm like, I don't ever do that, right? When we have guests, the my oblivious nature, right? Even if I have some inclination or awareness of who they are, I really try to reduce how much I know, because I think it's important to be as infantile, right? And when you come into a situation, to receive it and just receive what's coming your way. So once I looked at our schedule and I seen, oh, yeah, he is actually going to be on here, I need to stop and I need to back away and I need to just go into the week with the energy I had, which was, yeah, I need to act out of not thinking about failure, right? Just doing what needs to be done, and leaning in that direction has produced some incredible results. And it's been, I wouldn't say it's like a catastrophic meteorite of like proportions, but you get that one pebble, right, that stands out. And I think that you start to appreciate, right? Like, oh, let me really lean in on that gratitude, that thankfulness, that presence on that pebble, because I can find another one, hopefully, right? And I think that's the direction that we're headed in. So, we have someone here with us, Dave. Dave, please introduce yourself for those that don't know who you are.
I'm a fan of Lyrical Ones and Christian and Shannon, Alex, the whole crew here. I love you guys. I haven't met everybody, but I feel like I know you all. And
That's right.
yep, I found a tribe that I know I belong to in San Francisco.
That's right.
So so yeah, I'm just I'm just journeying like all you guys, man. Just trying to figure it out as I go, and I'm at a place where I feel like I'm at the best uh, season of my life. Yep.
All right.
Crucial, best season.
Dave Gibbons, welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. It's Wednesday, episode 52. And let me tell you this. One thing that I like about Dave is that his eyes are always have the aperture open, right? So he's always trying to receive more light in, right?
hmm
Um, and he's very aware of the shadows in the picture. Um, but he comes from this place of discovery.
mm
And like if you have a on switch, right, on ready to receive, right, his switch is on all the time, right, and it's dialed to 10, and then the knob is broken off, and he's in a space where, right, he wants to learn, right, and in every way when he learns, he's looking to pass it forward. He's looking to pass it on, right? He's he like it's like those Acme machines at the on Looney Tunes where they take in something and they make all these different noises like Willy Wonka, and then he's trying to pass it on right in some processed way that's edible to the next person, that's palatable to the next person, and I appreciate that so much because right there's the youthfulness of receiving, right, and the wisdom to then pass it on. And I think when we're young, right, we're in the space of discovery, and we're not in this space of how can I learn this and then pass it on, right? We're not necessarily in teacher mode until we have people around us that turn us into teachers, right? People who ask us questions, right? How was your day, right? And then you hear a 4-year-old, right, talk for 15 minutes straight, right? We're barely taking any breaths, right? We turn them into teachers in that way, and right, that ability to be in that space and say, right, I'm going to share, is something that I appreciate about Dave. I think that's something that I picked up from him, and I think I leaned in that direction a little bit more since meeting Dave, and I think that's kind of how I also ended up on this podcast. Is leaning more into that space of processing what the world is giving me, and being in a space of sharing it out.
Oh, definitely. And me, I know nothing. I'm oblivious. I have no awareness. As I said, I stopped myself in my tracks once I started learning. I was like, oh, nope, let's save it for this moment. So, Dave, like, how did you become acquainted with the Lyrical Opposition family, right? Like everyone may, some people do, some people don't have a connection, but you said, right, these are some people who you've been able to see like a reflection of yourself in. So how did that come about?
I got this random email from a guy named Christian who
The
said,
random
"Hey,
emails are the best."
I know, a random email from some crazy guy from San Francisco. Yeah, his name was Christian, and he said like something about reading my book or something, and said, "Can I talk to you about it?" And I responded to him, and we started connecting. And then I said, "If you really are serious, you need to come to one of the experiences I have, here in Orange County." And then he bought one of those cheap tickets from San Francisco, the all-nighter bus, and for $29 or something. He couldn't pay attention though when he got here, but at least he got here.
Right.
But that's how I got connected, So to get connected to Christian was to get connected to Lyrical Opposition. And at that time, I think there was a reboot going on, a reframing. And so then we just started a relationship. Of course, I fell in love with him. It was love at first sight. And then with Shannon the same way, in the seat. And then when I started meeting the people within Lyrical Ones and Lyrical Opposition, it was like family.
Oh, definitely. That's what's up. Shout out to Christian. He doesn't get brought up a lot. He doesn't get enough attention. He always tries to stay somewhere in the background, but it is true. He is a crazily ambitious figure who, is kind of like this, the center of the net, right? The center of the spider web, right? He's the one that, he pulls strings together and makes sweaters. So shout out to Christian, because, we all know Cross. We all heard of Cross, right? That's another individual, not even to be associated with Christian, but Christian. He deserves that attention and care and love. So, shout out to Christian for holding it down. But so you got acquainted with Christian and he read your book. So what was the book about? What was this book that gave him that initiative to want to say, I'm going to reach out?
I don't remember if it was Monkey and the Fish or Zealous.
Yeah, it was Monkey and the Fish, I think, first. I think we had that one first, the Liquid Leadership.
Yeah.
I think it was that one.
Yeah, because I wrote that like, I don't know how many years, like 25 years ago or something, because I was really fed up with a lot of the way the Christian world was talking about connecting with people in the world. And, it was very much like a salesman approach and targeting people that were like them. And I just found that contrary to what I was reading. And so I wrote a subtle polemic against that type of ideology. And it was based on a story called Monkey and the Fish. It was a parable. And the parable basically is, a monkey finds this fish. It looks like it's struggling in a river. And so the monkey wants to rescue it. So he dives in, pulls the fish out of the water, and then he puts him on the dry ground saying, there you go, buddy. Now you can rest here. And so then he swings away thinking he did something heroic, but he actually killed the fish. And I said, that's exactly what I think a lot of Western Christian types are doing, is they're imposing their culture and ideology on something that I don't know if God cares about as much. And in fact, I thought a lot of the things that they're proposing was the exact opposite of what I know God to be, and that he was telling us to love the ones not like us, and that the more we can do that, the more we love him, because he's the ultimate alien.
The ultimate alien. I like that. Ultimate alien. People pay attention. You know how I get on here. But Alfluent, it seemed like he was gonna say something.
Well, just that thing, when you hear that parable and you think about our space that we have here in Lyrical Ones, we are definitely interested in folks' stories, and like to learn someone's story or their history, right, is to to come to terms with who they are, right, as they are, the themes that are in their life, what they've lived with, what they struggle with, their pitfalls and their triumphs, and instead of giving them gospel, right, instead of giving them, what God to be, right, help them see where God is already in their life, and and then bond there, right, and not take their trauma, flip it on them to see the world the way you see it. And I think, we have this space where we get to, hear people, and we get to listen, and I'm grateful that, Dave and Christian really clicked in that sense where, they're both, people who focus on, the outsiders and the misfits, and the differences between us, and how that makes us special, and that's how we are connected really, by our uniqueness, and also we're not connected by our traumas, but where we are set to grow, and I think that's an important aspect of who we are, and how Dave connects to us. Dave, a question for you, when it comes to like part of the title of the book is third culture church, right? It's like when you talk about extra aspects of somebody's identity, and how we are not just children of our parents, right? We are also members of our families, and members of our communities, and partners in relationships, and practices of culture, and how do you think those things form our bonds, and how do you think those things can propel us to where we could go as a people, as humans?
Well, I think it's in the diversity of cultures that there's beauty. And I think there's, we learn more about ourselves the more we hang out with people not like us, because there's something that happens, I think, in our brains, this neuroscience wise, where, when you put yourself in a space of dissonance, or something that's contrarian to what you're normally used to, it just helps you to become more alive and alert. And, I think when it comes to, from my spiritual background, from a relationship with God, I feel like, when I say he's the ultimate alien, I don't mean he tries to be alienated from us, but he was someone that was abstract to humans, that was first described in stories and words, but then that wasn't enough. So he said, I need to come in flesh, and I need to engage. So he came from a different culture. And so I think part of it is to recognize and not try to change people's culture, but to see the beauty in it and to learn from it and to see the positive benefits of engagement. That the more you engage, the greater the illumination you'll have, I think, of yourself, of God, others, and your work. And then secondly, the other benefit is creativity, because it'll spark creative thinking. Your brain gets energized by the differences that you're in, the context that you're in. So that's why I think it's so important to not see other people, even if they're in a particular culture, as like a stereotype, because there's so much complexity, especially in our world today, where we have so many roots from different cultures. And so to narrowly prescribe a title or a label on somebody, I think limits and pigeonholes them and yourself to really growing.
No, I hear that. That's I mean, speaking of culture, right? And speaking of that context, what so we see you here now, right? Formed as you are. How did we get here, right? What was the culture like for the 5-year-old, 10-year-old you, right? What were you immersed in? What were you around, right? You said, being an OC and having, cross come down there, but it's like, okay, what was that the base, or how did that come to be the place that was even, for people to come to, right? So take us back, right? 5-10-year-old you, where were you at in the world?
Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't really think about my ethnicity. It didn't even come into play because I was just having fun. It's like, it's before you realize the world's watching you, like, or has a vision of who you are, good or bad. You're just kind of having fun, I think, and you're playing, and it's probably the best state of mind. It's where you're unconcerned about other people's opinions. And so I think at that time, I didn't know I was Asian really till I came to Arizona. So I moved from Maryland to Arizona when I was in 4th grade. And then people started calling me chink, Chinaman, slant eyes, pan face, whatever you want to say. Just throw it all out there. And I just never had, I didn't know I was this way. And suddenly, I'm being branded a certain way. My mom, my siblings are. And then, man, I'm getting into fights. And so, I got into the point where I said, I made up my mind when I was younger. I said, I'll just prove it to you that I'm better than you in a way. So I took a hard attitude, like, okay, so I'm not going to physically beat you up, but I will excel in everything that I can excel in and show you. And so it was kind of a defensive mood in a way, just to kind of deal with, I think, the tensions. I didn't know how to cope with it. So that was the way I did it. And I just started playing sports and academics, trying to be the social butterfly. And, it was hard because I'm an introvert. So I had to talk to myself all the time. And I had tons of anxiety, just to put yourself out there constantly. And so, yeah, that's kind of the progression as I started dealing with the race issues when I was about 4th grade. And it became more accentuated as I went into grad school or to undergrad and then to grad school. And then, recently with the happenings that we're experiencing now.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And you said, you lived in Maryland prior to moving to Arizona. How long was the family history in Maryland? Like, how long did that exist for your family?
Yeah, that was probably at least 5 years. And then what kind of precipitated the move was a fire. Our house caught on fire. My sister was cooking, and we were out in a rural part of Maryland, and yeah, it all burned up. And then my dad said, "Hey, when do we move to Arizona?" Because his brother was there. And so, we weren't following God or anything like that, but they were really engaged from a fundamentalist Baptist perspective. So, we went out there and then, of course, got connected to the church there. And so my Christianity was fostered and in this very black and white legalistic type of framework. Good people, really great people, but they had a framework of theology and perspective of life that I think was really based on a lot of shame and the dark side of humanity.
Was it the fear of the dark side of humanity? Like, was it that trying to cast a big boundary between like we know what society has and we don't want to go there, right? Or is it like does it become the because you spoke to it in saying that you meet someone from a different culture, you don't create the stereotype, right? You allow yourself to discover them to then be the reflection or projection of that culture, right? And so when you say that they had a very black and white way of seeing things in a fundamental, right, in a philosophical theologian way, right? It's like this is how we're going to see it, and we're going to was it invoking fear in you as a child? Was it trying to provoke an idea of like you don't do this with fire and brimstone, right, as the consequence?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if they intentionally did it,
Right.
but it was part of the main emphasis. Like I just remember being scared all the time. And you know how they always have these invitations, especially Baptist churches, and I don't know how many times I got saved, man. I got saved thousands of times. Even if I didn't walk forward and cry, I was getting saved again in that seat every time a preacher would preach on hell or tribulation. And they were showing like Thief in the Night, they called it, like these like apocalyptic type movies before Jesus came. I was terrified, man.
Revival all the time.
Yeah, and then it's the other side of it too. It's like you have to go on the offensive. Like, hey, people are going to have this type of life in the future. They're going to go to hell unless you go and witness to them.
Right.
And so then you felt this like compulsion. I got to go witness. So they were training us to witness when we were in fourth grade. Man, we were out in buses. They were taking us to neighborhoods, dropping tracts at doors, knocking on doors, asking people if they knew if they were going to go to heaven or hell. And so I was raised, man, in this type of, but it was they're good people.
Right.
But what I found is too, it's interesting. If you look at the strains of thought and culture, I think a lot of times people come in pain, right? A lot of these people. And then also if it's more of a blue collary culture, potentially, they're used to people telling them what to do and how to think. And so there's almost like that's a comfort to have that strong of a patriarchal type of leader, and so they think that's like spiritual almost. It's authoritarian type of person. And then also I felt like if they're coming from a chaotic background, they really want order, and I think that's what became somewhat of the attraction for me when my family got chaotic down the road, my mom and my dad's divorce and stuff. That propelled me to look for answers. And they said they had all the answers, basically.
Okay. And so was there a departure from that kind of that, I guess, pathway, right? Like you're in the Baptist church, you're also dealing with the newfound identity of having to be defensive around who you are, and then having this execution and excellence as the way to show like, this is me determining my self-value and worth in your eyes, right? Like you can't deny me because I'm doing what you do better than you, and I'm making the decision to commit myself to that. So with those two sides, how, like, was there a departure at some point, or was it like, what, I'm going even deeper into the Baptist life where now I'm going to excel and perfect my approach to witnessing to others, right? To trying saving these, lost souls, in a sense of like, I've now been institutionalized, or I've been inundated with this idea that I'm here to help, right? But the way that we're helping is this kind of what the word is coming straight down the pipeline for me to give it to you the same way, right? Did you lean deeper into that, or did you break off from that?
Well, initially in high school and college, I started leaning into it more because what the motivation is that the highest calling is to be a pastor or missionary. Like, and so there was these appeals and invitations. Like, if you really want to be 100% all in, you got to become a pastor. So if you feel God calling you to be a pastor or missionary right now, you come on forward, And so, I was leaning heavier into this when really I think I'm an artist and I'm a business guy, But I said, man, if I'm all in, man. If God's really real, I better be all in. So I'm going to take it to the ultimate. So that's why I went to then a Christian university, which was the biggest Christian university at the time. But all this time, I started asking questions, even though because I was third culture, I think, because I come from an Asian, white, and then I was being challenged about my identity. I started asking institutional systemic questions even as a youth, right? But you're not talking about that because you'll be seen as rebellious. So you keep it under the undercurrents, and then with your friends and trusted people, you may talk about it. But then it became pronounced probably in undergrad, where I was starting to think a little differently. I was being challenged when I started reading the Bible more clearly and looking at Jesus' life. I said, there's some things here that doesn't make sense. And then I got called into the Dean of Men's office when I was a sophomore. It was right before my sophomore year, I think it was. Yeah, it was before my sophomore year. And the guy, he said, hey, it's been reported you've been dating Caucasian. You can't do that anymore. And he says, we have a no interracial dating policy here. And I said, well, my understanding is I'm half Korean and I'm half white, and I get a choice. Because this is one of the rules they had. And he goes, no, you don't. You look 100% Asian. And he goes, even though you're culturally American and speak English, because those are the other two factors, like what you look like, your language, and then your culture. And so I said, well, I got 2 out of 3. And he says, not good enough. And he says, you'll probably want to leave our school. And so what precipitated this is the backstory, I think, is at that time, and it's historic. You can read about it. I think even some Black history books as well, is that at that time, it was 1981 or 2, the Supreme Court took the school I was going to task and said, you can no longer hold this policy or this rule at your school and have tax exempt status. And this school then said, we have the right to believe anything we want to believe and still have tax exempt status. So that went all the way to Supreme Court and affected all the nonprofits in the country. So that ABC News, CBS, all the major networks were coming on our campus, checking out our school. So they were concerned about me, I think, being seen. Now, what was the catch-22 at that time was my brother, my literal flesh and blood brother. He looks more white than I do, and he was able to still date white.
Wild.
Yeah.
Extremely wild. Like, what?
Yeah,
literally the one drop rule, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. So that caused, I think, a deep searching, of course, because these were like the heroes of the Christian world I belonged to, and then there were some people that started stepping out of the woodworks, like some professors I admired. They pulled me aside and said, hey, Dave, you're on the right track. Hang on. And so they were kind of like, I felt God always gave me some like these guys or women that said, hey, you're thinking right. Don't be afraid to think, And so I started questioning all these things. I actually went back to the school. My sister was paying for my education. And I felt, this sounds kind of weird. It's not like I hear God's voice all the time, but what I felt in my heart was that I was supposed to go back to know how to live in that context of racism. So how do you deal with it when you're in oppression? And so I stayed there for 3 more years and graduated. And I was in leadership positions on the campus. So I was the catch-22 for them because, they were afraid I was going to report them to the ACLU because they didn't have an internal witness from the campus, a student that would speak up. And so they're afraid that I would be that one. And then my dad at that same time wanted to sue the school. He wanted to take him to court. I mean, we would have won big time because, there's a weird scenario with my brother and then me. That alone is kind of weird. And then of course the racism thing. So anyways, that's kind of the thing that I think took me on a trajectory to deal with race early, from my 4th grade year, then to college. And then I started enlarging the framework to like institutional systemic racism. And then I started seeing it within religion, especially. Religion became It's one of the biggest slave masters, I think, in the world. And so, so to call it out, you're going against mainstream like white evangelicalism and white supremacy.
Right.
Definitely. I mean, that's a major, like, to have had those experiences to then say, oh yeah, and I'm gonna step it up a notch and just call out the whole structure as it is. I'm here now. Hey, what y'all gonna do? And so, you know, you kind of reference like that call to action, right? Like you experienced it firsthand, and then it was about taking ownership over what you had control over without provoking harm, right? It was like, I'm not gonna hurt you. I want to. I'm not going to. Right? And the way I'm gonna show my level of resistance is I'm gonna take the game that you're giving me, and I'm gonna just go to town, right? I'm gonna just take it to task. I'm gonna take it to the next level. And then you look at faith, and you look at kind of this pervasiveness of like, oh yeah, you ain't afraid of the world. Be afraid of the world. And then you're like, after a while, you're like, why be afraid if I'm with it, if I'm one of it, right? And then going to like one of the best schools, seeing that as a trajectory, right? And just so I have more context, was the sister that was helping fund your education, was that also the sister that burnt down the house?
Yeah.
How many siblings do you have?
Just two.
Just two. So you got a older brother, older sister?
A younger brother, older sister.
Okay. So you have this older sister who's also kind of the unfortunate catalyst of change, who's also now the catalyst of like supporting you in this way, right? Which I think is even more of a unique circumstance to be like, oh yeah, go back into the trenches, or for lack of a better term, and I don't mean harm by this, go back into the fire, right? Go back into the thing that is causing the heat and this tension, right? And then show up, get what you need to get out of it, right? And then from there, seeing, okay, now I have the tool set. What happens from that point when you leave school and then you see the world kind of at your doorstep? Like, what was like the first job or the first part of you saying, I'm joining society now? What do I do?
Well, this was really cool because I went to a seminary that was considered like their elite seminary for the Baptist fundamentalist type of community. And when I was there, I said, I just started working. Like I had to work, man. What are you going to get with a Bible degree? So I was a custodian for 2 years. I worked as a custodian. And then after being, the first year I didn't work, I didn't go to school because I saw that Israeli men would take a year off when they got married, just to get to know their wives, in the Bible. So I said, man, I like that idea, man. I just want to have relations with my wife that whole year, man. I want to focus on that.
Right.
And so I did that and I got the job, and the custodial work was really important because then you see the prejudice that happens with work. They didn't know I was working on my graduate degree or, and that I had a better education than a lot of these other people. They just saw me in my uniform. And so I just saw, so the Lord, I think, kind of put me through the context of what I need to understand for the future. And so then I went to that seminary and I said, man, I'm not being challenged. And then I said, well, what's the best seminary in the world? And that, everybody I was reading at that time was from Dallas. And so eventually I went to Dallas. And that's when, I started going deeper into understanding leadership and stuff. But, what happened, I think, is the Great Awakening at Dallas was, that we can impact people through leadership development. And then secondly, I think it was the Korean cultural side of me, because I wasn't involved with Koreans at all. I was involved with white megachurch stuff, white fundamentalism. And so what eventually happened is this Korean guy saw me when I was visiting the campus for like one of the first times. And he goes, hey, you Korean? I go, yeah. And he goes, hey, let's hang out, bro. And I said, okay, we hung out. He goes, hey, man, you speak English really fluently. He goes, have you ever been to a Korean church? I go, never. He goes, you need to come to my Korean church. And it was this big mega church in the East Coast. It was Maryland again, back to Maryland. And he goes, come check it out. And I went there and flew there. And I couldn't believe I saw like hundreds, like thousands of people there. I forget the number. And I saw these kids in the youth group meeting. And I saw they're bored out of their minds, man. This bored, listening to like these people who couldn't really connect with them or communicate culturally. And I go, oh my gosh, I go, this is horrible because the Bible is so exciting and they're making it boring, man, not on purpose. And it's like, then it just struck me. I had an epiphany. I go, oh, maybe that's why I'm alive, man. It's to help bridge that stuff.
Yeah.
And so then I started pursuing that. And so eventually when I was at Dallas, Korean church hired me as like the youth EM English ministry guy. And then I went to this, after I graduated with my degree, grad school, this mega church, Korean church, asked me to come in Maryland to pastor there. And I told God, this is the only church I think I could go to. Because I've been to a lot of other Korean churches after that. I said, this guy is the only one that I probably could work with that would understand me. And then he asked me to come work with him. And then I discovered something, man, that was like another shocking thing, was you think immigrants sometimes would be the most open. But then I also saw how the Asians could also be very racist. And I saw how they're racist against my wife because she was white. And then I saw how they're racist potentially with their children marrying black or white, and I said, oh, okay, this is like in every race,
right? This is why I'm here.
And I just said, dang it. And then after being there for 5 years, I said, I don't think I'm called to do this. And I realized that the model I had been accepting was like, there's Peter and there's Paul. Peter was the guy that focused on the Jewish guy, Orthodox type stuff. Paul was like global. And I said, man, I think I'm more like Paul. And if I'm forced to deal with like this, like monoculturalism and just homogeneous stuff all the time, I'm going to die. And so I said, man, I think I'm called to be more like Paul. And so that's when I started looking to leave. And that's when eventually I would come to California. Nice.
So how old were you when you came to California?
I was, I think I was 29 or 30, 31, maybe 30, 31, 34. I don't remember. Okay, I graduated when I was 26. So I think I was 29, something like that.
And then from there, you was like, I ain't looking back. I'm here. I'm gonna get my roots.
The vision was this, man. What precipitated was seeing what was not working within the homogeneous group. And this was the brightest like Korean church at that time that had a future hope, right? And I said, dang it, even though they said I'll be taking over as a leader, it's probably not going to happen. Because historically, it never happened, the transitions with the immigrant churches to the next generation. It's a rare thing. And so I knew that I could stay there, but it'd be a nuance of change. Or I could create a new wineskin. Not that old wineskin's bad, but I created new wineskin. So then I just started doing demographic research. We had no internet, remember, at that time. There's a thing called American Demographics. I looked at the U.S. Census Bureau. I got all the stats. I looked at news articles. I went to the library. Then I flew to about 5 different cities in the nation. And I would just walk or drive through the cities and say, man, is this the right place? Is this the right place? And then it came down to New York or L.A. area. And then I like New York. There's a cool energy there, but it didn't feel like it was me. And then when I came to West Coast, I said, this is it, man. This is about innovation, multiculturalism. It's a pioneering spirit. I think I need to breathe this energy. And so I told my wife, I said, hey, listen, I think, because I thought I got this word, that I was in a hotel room when I was speaking while I was thinking about this, if someone invited me to come speak in Orange County. And when I was there, I was in a hotel and I thought I heard a word. Again, I don't hear God's voice. It sounds like maybe I hear him all the time. I don't hear an audible voice all the time, but once in a while, I feel like I hear something. And this is like a once in a while thing. And I heard Psalm 40, Psalm 40, Psalm 40. I heard several times. Like, what the heck, Psalm 40? It said, I took your feet out of the muddy clay and I placed you on a rock. I've given you a new song. Many people will fear and trust in my name. And I just got shocked. And I go, dang it. And I looked outside the window and I saw like Southern California outside my window. And I said, oh my God. I said, you're calling me to come to Southern Cal? And then I came back to my wife and I said, hey, I think we're supposed to go to SoCal. What do you think? And she goes, Dave, I think you're made for this. And she goes, I got your back. And then we sold everything we had within a few months and we came to California. And oh, by the way, right before this, what was interesting was the LA riot stuff. And so that happened. So that also helped spark you know what, this is a huge need, reconciliation. So that's our one word focus, is reconciliation.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like when Sineo and I are both from San Francisco, and like I grew up with really kind of just like my family being like me, and then no one else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like my neighborhood for sure, right? Because like the segregation from the naval shipyard, um, and where the jobs were. But then when I go to school and I go to class, I sit in class and there's no one like me. And then I grow up and I, come back to San Francisco from being in SoCal, and my tribe, my folks that are around me, the people that I travel with, right? None of them are like me, right? Because either when I travel, so, right, the only few people are from the Bay Area or live in the Bay Area, and then I'm meeting people from different places, and then within lyrical opposition, right, everybody's different. Cineo's got a multicultural background, um, Christian,
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, Figo, right? All of us are different, in so many different ways, and we have different things that overlap us in our belief system and our scope of the world. But we're in this space where we have so many differences that we are forced to learn where each other comes from, right? Because we're all raised differently, right? We all have different things, and then we've all like experienced high school differently, right? We experienced middle school differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Christian and I went to the same high school, but we experienced it differently. um and then professionally, right, we experience the world differently, right? With the police, we experience the world differently, right? And our scope of legislation, right, our interaction with religion, right, we experienced it differently. And we're steadily, even at from week to week, right, going like having different experiences in life based on our culture, based on how we look, right? So like when Cineo comes on and I come on, and we're both in a space of service, and then we compare notes, right? And right, we're having different experiences just based on the people that we interact with, but we share similar goals, right, in interacting with those things. And when you came to SoCal, and right, this idea of reconciliation, right, but what did the start look like? Like who were you when you looked at the demographics and you looked at numbers and say, okay, right, reconciliation, right, needs to happen, but like where do we start? Who's the who of who God is calling us to to speak to listen from, to learn.
Well, it's so crazy because, what you learn as you get older is you don't, it's like Kobe Bryant, like, yeah, Phil Jackson say, hey, let the game come to you, and because when he was younger, he forced the game, he
Right.
tried to push it. And so when I look at what happened is like, it's almost like God brought the game to me. And what happened is right before I got out there, an LA Times reporter called me about the silent exodus of Asian Americans leaving the church. And it became column one. Like, again, there was no internet. The newspaper was the main vehicle. It became column one, front page, when we came out. And so it set us up. So from that, all these Asians came. And it was mostly Koreans, because the Koreans were leaving the church en masse, and the Asians. And then I was someone who at least spoke English, because, to me, I'm not like, I'm all right, but it was like there wasn't too many people doing it, I think.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people started coming, and it just started growing. But then what happened is, I noticed it wasn't getting diverse. It was like 90% Asian and 10% other. It got diverse in the sense of different Asians, which is black and white in Asia, but I wanted it to be a visible because people would look at that.
Right.
And so what we did is our first multi-site that we launched, we asked the question, what culture near us is most unlike us? And amongst our Black leadership, they said it has to be Crenshaw, Culver City. They said there's one of the biggest populations of single moms, which, that they need help. And they're the ones that we need to come alongside of. So that became our first multi-site. So I knew they weren't coming to my community that I had started. So I said, let's launch another one so that it could be in their context.
Right.
And then the second one was like Bangkok. And that was very different than us. That was amongst the Isan people group, which is like the worst looked down upon people in Southeast Asia. That area is considered the armpit of Southeast Asia. It's where the prostitutes come from to go into Bangkok. And so that's how we would always ask, well, who's the one that's the most outcast in our region? And then where's the darkest place to go? We said, that's where we want to go. And so that's how, we intentionally had to step into or outside of our homogeneous, even group that was starting to form New Song and shake it up. Right. And then that's been the progression even to this day, where once we grew really big, I realized it's still not happening like I think it needs to happen. So that's when we moved from the upper middle class Irvine to Santa Ana.
Nice. And now in this last year, I think what has been, revealed to you as far as where reconciliation can go, from here?
Well, I think there's so much, man. That's a huge question, but for me, maybe a couple of things come to mind. Number one is we have to recognize the reckoning, and this is especially amongst the white supremacists and people who don't even know they're white supremacists. And it's a lot of the white evangelical churches and leadership. And then also it's amongst some of the conservative politically within our country that they have not been able to come to a reckoning yet. They're still in denial or trying to believe false narratives and so they're not willing to really talk to those in the city or on the front lines to understand the pain. And so it's a defensive posture. I get it because I grew up in that type of atmosphere. But I think number one is it calls us to a reckoning. And so, just go listen and experience before you impose and be defensive. Go take the time to immerse yourself into the population that's opposite of you again, so you can understand what's going down. There's some great movies on this, like documentaries. Like there's one that I think this Indian or this Arab girl did, where she went into a white supremacist culture. So she went the opposite way, and she was able to talk to like a skinhead or to some of these white Nazi types, and they converted, from her just having conversation with her and them getting to know her. But again, it goes both ways, but I think there needs to be a reckoning, and the way you go about it is go listen and stay curious. Don't go with any preconstructions in your head or stereotypes. Go really try to learn, but you need to immerse yourself in an intentional relationship outside your comfort zone right now. And if that doesn't happen, it's not going to change. I think because it's really about trust, and trust is built over time in relationship with somebody. And so I think that's the big one. Second one is, I think we have to definitively create the new wineskin. And we don't need to focus upon just reforming. It's almost like what you see in Black Lives Matter, where they say defund the police. To me, they tried to reform the police for decades. It hasn't worked. So that's why they're saying defund the police. So once you understand that narrative, you know why they're saying defund the police.
Right.
It's because
they're like pour the wine up.
Yeah, it's like, so it's not working. We've tried that. So we need to dismantle the whole system.
Right.
And so to me, I get that. But you always got that old wineskin. So it's to me a both and.
Right.
Where you have to create this both and, where there's going to be this old school that does this, but then you have the R&D. And this is like any great company. They have like an R&D. And a great company has to fuel the R&D for it to be a company of the future. So to me, it's like, instead of just, because it happens in any institution or culture where you just get polarized saying you need to do this or that. And it's like you try and tell your grandma to not use her flip phone, and say, hey, you need to try this iPhone 12. This is so much better for you. And she's just really happy with her flip phone, man. So why am I going to try to convince her to use iPhone 12? It's just, it ain't going to happen. She's just so comfortable with the flip phone, and this is what she needs to do with it. So I feel it's almost that way, that there's people that to the day they die, they're not going to change. And so what you do is you still love them. I don't have to understand them, but I still try to love them. But I don't need to have them lead our system and the system I'm called to create. And I'm not going to let it hold me back from creating the system or the dream I think I'm supposed to build. Because otherwise, I'm just going to spend my time trying to convince and all my resources and energy on that versus the creation of the new. And so to me, I said in my lifetime, I want to focus on creating the new. And over time, my guess is that this is going to be so attractive that even some of those other people are going to say, man, I want that. But they can't see it or feel it until you've actually created it.
Absolutely true. I agree. And you said something that resonates with me, because I feel like I sit in a very unique position, being one that works with different community organizations, right? And there's that, you say the new wineskin, and I agree with you. I think that there's always this rush to dismantle something without having a blueprint of what we're going to build next, right? It's a thing where I understand that as well, right? We've tried so long to reform it that what has happened in that conversation, right? Little to nothing. So then it's, well, let's, like kind of referencing something last week I said, right? Change from within. Some people see it as, oh, we're just renovating this room. Whereas change from within for me is, oh no, I'm placing these TNT sticks and I'm trying to clear out the building so we could bring it down, right? Because to me, it's a very different interpretation of the same thing, that change from within. And I'm not saying let's destroy it without having something in place to try, right? I think like there's something about having the space and grace for failure, right, that we often are afraid of. And then there's room for people to have to accept and understand that fear, because we at times become one with what is the issue, right? The issue becomes a part of our lives. It becomes a part of our routine. It becomes the thing that we've come to like understand and acknowledge and like find this weird sense of comfort in, right? It's almost like this Stockholm syndrome of life, right? Where it's like, I know this thing is limiting me, but because I know it and have had such a long-term relationship with it, I can't see my life without it. I can't see life beyond it, right? And it's like, hold on, wait a minute. But is this sustainable, right? Is this sustainable for growth, or is this sustainable for complacency, right? Because talking to the flip phone to the iPhone, right? The most important question sometimes we have to ask ourselves, can I still talk to my grandma, right? Can I still talk to her? If she could use the flip phone to talk to me, we're good. Otherwise, what I'm doing is I'm getting lost in the sauce of my own current context of life, right? Because I maybe have seen the merit or the usefulness, the utility in this device, that now I want you to have it because I love you and you need to have it because I want you to feel what I feel, but I can't ensure that, right? I can't make sure that you're going to feel what I feel because you don't have the same purposes that I have with this tool, right? And I think that you're hitting on all these different narratives, right? Where it's like, look, be receptive and accept that maybe what people want is the same. And if you don't want it, then also accept that maybe you need to do what's necessary for you to make that change as you see fit, right? Because there are people who they'll see the change once it's real, because you have to create the thing first, right? Like it's one thing for me to tell you, it's another thing for you to walk and experience it and go, right? Everyone's like, oh, have you been to Disneyland? And they tell you, and it's like, oh, that sounds kind of trash. Then you go and you're like, oh my goodness, this is magical, right? I've got to experience the magic, right? But that's the thing where we're almost referencing a point in universal design, right? Accessibility isn't just limited to me telling you, it's you being able to experience it, right? It's some will receive that word and say yes. Some need to actually have put in the time to go through it and figure out what that is to then say, oh my goodness, I didn't even know, right? No matter how many times I tell you and I'm blue in the face, it's not until I've actually created the thing that then you can say, well, I actually had my chance with it and now I know from it, right? And I think that's important for those that are listening, those that will listen in the future, right? For those that can't see everything that we're saying and are only going to hear the audio only version, it's important to know that as we have this conversation, Dave has a map of the world behind him, right? And I think that it highlights how much perspective goes into what he's saying, right? There's a worldly view and understanding, like back to what he's saying to Peter and Paul, right? Like, can I think of this small group, or can I think of the globe as it exists and the people all over, right? As I find the calling to go back to where I came from, and then I learn a new lesson, do I travel to another place that I can see myself exist in before it materializes? And I have that support to engage, to then say, well, who are we talking to and how are we reaching those that need us, right? How do we even perceive that, right? Are we looking at society and saying, well, what is it that I have access to that you don't, right? What is it that I can provide that will give some sustainability, give you some change, right? Something that's different than what you've had. And then leaning even further where it's like, okay, now we're going to take it across the water. We're going to take it across the ocean. And I think that that all comes in a very secular mindset where it's like, right? There's the context for why, and then for making sure that every step of the way, people have access to the what. And I think it's very important for people to realize that yeah, we can love someone and see maybe they're just they're so fixated on the thing that brings them that comfort, even if it may be harmful, right? Poison is in the dosage, right? And some people, they need that slow drip every day, right? You may see it as harmful, but if that's what gives them life, at some point you have to say, well, what gives me life? And lean into that. Because I think that's what I gather from what you're saying, right? Is like, it's important not only to see people in the harm they're in, but also identify, well, if that's where they want to be, you know what, I can't let that stop me from doing what I need to do. Because when you say all that, I look at the world I work in, and it's like this nonprofit industrial complex, right? Where so many people think they have the solution, or the solution turns into this thing where we have Band-Aids for bullet wounds, right? It's like, you're gushing blood. We'll just put a Band-Aid on it, and, we'll give you short-term, success for long-term problems. And it's like, for me, I can keep looking at this system and saying, let me go in deeper and try more, when they just want their old flip phone. And I'm like, well, the benefits of being able to create my own movie on an iPhone and being able to share that movie with people, right? That's different enough to give somebody to hold on to if I lean into that. And I think that's the takeaway for myself, right? In reflection of what you're saying is, yeah, sometimes there's just this old outdated system that's just so crystallized that sometimes you got to be like, you know what? I'm going to let you be, and I'm going to go do me, right? Because that's also what you said, right? You're like, I'm at the church, and they're giving me the kind of the bait, right? We'll give you the church. And then you look at the past for the context, and you're like, this doesn't exist. This ain't here. What are you talking about? Like, you keep selling me on a dream that if I wait on you to give it to me, it changes my whole life, versus me changing my life now because I've taken the initiative to make the move, right? It's like, I'm going to go put in the research, right? You even said without the context, what the context of time is, I don't have the internet. So I was really motivated to go and do the research, to find the data, to find the numbers, to reinforce my conviction, right? I have this conviction God gave me. Now I'm going to do my due diligence to explore the world as it exists, to get the information to say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I think that that's important, that people really pay attention, right? We get trapped in these systems, and, like you said, you sold everything, right? That was a sacrifice. That was you identifying there's value in what I have, but the value isn't what I have. It's what I'm going after. And I think people don't always see that, right? It's like, I get so inundated with my pacification because of the things that I have value in, that I don't even realize the value isn't what I have. It's the value of what's next, right? The value of what I can do with what I have, right? Sometimes it's literally taking the tools as they exist in your hands. And sometimes it's saying, you know what, I need to get rid of the tools because they're weighing down the journey. Right. And I think that sometimes it's like, oh, no, these tools give me comfort, so I'm just going to sleep with them at night, and I'm going to caress them, and I'm going to look at them, and I'm going to look at myself, look at them, and I'm just going to enjoy sharing that idea, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for some of you, very well, that's not the case. And I think that's the thing that for me has been such a discovery in this conversation is, like really identifying those moments in time where it's like, really leaning into me, right? Not getting so lost on the other kind of esoteric or the outside variables and really honing in on, well, let me drive into this direction, really zone in on that thing and be the change and make the change and give people access to that change. So, Alfluent, I see you got some, so let the thing go.
Well, like it really is, right? Seeking equity, right? Is and you're saying, right, there is more to life that I've found, but I know that people can have more, but I have to look for them and show, right, I have to look for them because no one else is going to look for them for me, right? And equity is not me telling you, right, that we're going to give you what you need, right? I could say that to you every day, right? That's torture, right? I can tell you I'm going to give you what you need every day, right? I'm going to tell you every time I see you, I'm going to give you what you need. And that's what people are living with, right? They're living that. They hear it. I'm going to hear it, right? Oh, right. They go to the town hall meeting, right? They go to work, right? They go to the school, right? They come to the parent teacher conference meeting. I'm going to give you a student what they need, right? I'm going to give you what you need. They go to church, say we could give you what you need. And right, it's there's no equity there. And if no one is acknowledging that this person, this group, this child, this student is being looked over and left out daily, regularly, habitually, if no one is identifying them and then addressing, right, that inequity, right, it's never going to happen. So then you have to say, well, okay, I'm going to take it upon myself, right, not to change their world, right, but to show them that the world is changing, right, and that it's okay for them to believe that it's changing and then experience that change, and then right, they'll also be motivated to be a part of their change, right? They'll be motivated to say, oh wait, this is what, no, that's equity. I like the taste of that.
Right.
Like, oh, that's nice. No one ever served me that before, right? I did not know that it could be cooked that way, right? And then they say, oh well, you ruined my life, right? Or you changed it forever, right? They have those responses, and right, sometimes people, right, they race back to zero. They say, well, how can I get this out of my hands, right? They say, oh well, because I never had it before, and so now I get a little bit of it. All right, I might say, well, I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm gonna hold on to these shackles, right? I'm gonna hold on to this, right? This
Mm.
this right, this inhibition, right? I'm gonna hold on to this procrastination. I'm gonna hold on to dreaming, right? Instead of right walking toward, some goals. And right, we see it happen, and right, we can't overextend and say, oh well, I'm gonna spend everything that I got so that you can see what I see. No, it's like if you don't want to see it, right? It's like we got in this generation, right? They hold the phone like this to say they're talking on the phone when we hold the phone like this, right? To say we were talking on the phone, right? Because they never had, right, the receiver on one end and the microphone on the other end. They never had that, right? They just know this, right? This is me pretending I'm on the phone, right? And say, well, are you on the? What are you doing, Alex? What are you? Nah, my reality, right? It's like, oh well, I didn't. Is that something new? Is that something great? Is that something like that's special, right? It's like I never seen the world that way before. It's like, well, I really like this way. Well, all right, you keep that, right? As long as, right, we can have this exchange, right? If we can have this exchange, right, then you don't need to go straight too far, right, toward what's comfortable for me, right? You can stay a little bit in that comfort zone as long as you're receptive, right? So however we're going to communicate, right, is this, that's fine. But I know that you can have more, right? And I'm here in this space, in this time, right? This time space, right? Particularly to have this exchange with you, right? And so like when none of us are right in the space by accident. And I think a lot of times we're looking for the next thing, and the next thing is right in front of us, right? Right the right. It's like when you look out the window, you say, "Oh, SoCal's right there," right? You didn't see it when you weren't there, right? You saw it when you got there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you acknowledge, right, what you see. And I think, right, even for you, Sineo, right, in the space that you're in, right, you're seeing, right, where you are, and right, the next move, right in directly in front of you, right. I think, throughout this, this series, right, we've seen, you've been able to see that transition, and right, and be, compelled toward that step that's right in front of you. um and I think, Dave, I think what you touched on, right, brought some things together for us, um you know in terms of that, just sharing your story, and the fact that, you know equity can be close and equity can be far, and it can be, local, right, it can be hyper local, right, and then it can be native to someone else somewhere far away, right. And right, if you can take care of, what's in front of you, right, it'll give you momentum to reach out, and right, and I think, it's thematic in your experience, where you ended up back in Maryland, right, and but you needed to be in Maryland to see that it wasn't there for you,
Yeah.
right. And I think a lot of times we slow down, right before, you know right before that turn, and you say, I'm not gonna make that turn, but you never saw what wasn't for you, right. And if you never see what's not for you, right, how are you gonna turn around to go the other way, right? It's like, I'm going straight, but if I turn right, I'll hit the dead end. That'll turn me around and have me end up going left from where I started, and the left was the turn I was supposed to make. But we never get turned around, because we go past the turn. We would just go right past the right turn. And I think a lot of times, we see that happen, and we think ourselves, out of not just the opportunity, but the chance to be, a blessing to somebody, a chance to be an ear or a shoulder, and you know, really, someone is like right there at that dead end. Someone is, on that left turn. Right, there's someone that's right there in front of us that we may be overlooking, right, in our own privilege, in our own scope, right, as males being on here, right, we don't see the world in the same way that the most looked over, the most left out, and Native American transgender folks, right, the most endangered, right, women of color, right, we don't, right, widowed, we don't, children, right, folks who don't have voices, right, who are not heard, in this country, in this world. And we have opportunities as we get closer to those people, but right, it's like, it's taking that theme that's already there in our lives and saying, the people around me don't look like me already. What's getting around some more people that don't look like me, and don't, that don't see the world the way I see, right? Like, if I'm comfortable with people who don't look like me already, I might as well go find some more of them, and find out how they can end up in the same, right, space as me, in the same tribe, in the same scope, in the same search for equity, right, for themselves, right. We don't empower others, right. We don't empower them, right. We're alongside them as they seek empowerment, right. We're not doing it for them. And I think that's what I've enjoyed about Lyrical Ones. Like, I'm not giving them any kind of keys, right? We just talk about some keys that we have, and maybe they look down and say, "Oh, I got some keys here, right here, that I didn't even know that this, I could open this one, and I could open this lock, and I can open this lock with what's already been given to me." And I think that's the beautiful thing about this exchange, is that we can all reflect and say, I got some keys and some locks ahead of me, and I can open some doors. Once I'm willing. And there's some people in Lyrical Ones, like we say, the people listening, you're all Lyrical Ones, and if you see that you have some keys, and you got some locks, we can talk about how you can start to move and open up some doors in your life, where And, if you need some help, if you need, some interaction and exchange on how to do that, um, the people that we bring on, the guests that we bring on, including Dave, we got people who are around who are interested, and reserve energy to have that exchange, to help you with that. Um, Dave, is there anything that you want to impart on us and our audience, before you go?
Yeah, I've been captured with the thought that we don't have to make things happen. It's already happening.
Yeah.
And so it's like you don't have to make the wave. The wave's already there. And so the effort to try to generate a wave it can be destructive for you, because a lot of it's supernatural. It's bigger than us. So life is more about trying to catch the wave. And then as you catch the wave, you can be creative still. So you're not losing your creativity, but it's learning how to flow. And so it's almost letting it be versus trying to fight it. And it's almost the way that comes out when I was listening to you guys is, when we're talking about our grandma or people who may not agree with us or whatever, it's like, it doesn't help when a person's like in a stress mode or they're anxious or they got triggered. No matter how reasonable we are, it's not going to matter. They don't hear it. But you see people still trying to argue. And so it's just like they don't realize, hey, you know what, you're reasonable, but they can't hear you. And so why are you trying to convince them when they're not hearing you? And so as a person who sees that, if you're self-aware and aware of others, hey, this is not the time. I need this to let them calm down and be with them or give them some space. And then we can maybe go at it again. But I think that's part of flowing versus forcing it. But I think this piece too that, Sin hit where he says, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I agree with that. And I would add, I need to do what I need to do. And also I need to lean into others, where I need to be vulnerable enough to say, I can't do it alone. I need your help. And because any great relationship has three components. It's asking, receiving, and giving. Those are healthy relationships. And if you look from a theological perspective, it says we are made in his image. So to me, the closest we can be to God often is going to be through other human interactions, because they are literally the physical image of God. And so they're almost like portals into his being. So that's why there's moments when an artist is doing poetry or they're singing or they're speaking. There's moments that are transcendent.
Right.
And we get glimpses of glory in a way. It's like it moves you to tears or inspires you to a different level. So it doesn't matter if they're Christian or not. It's everybody's made as a reflection of God. So I can learn from everybody. Doesn't matter what religion they're from, what philosophy. It's just being there and seeing that part of God in them. And I think if we do that, we'll realize God is constantly speaking to us. If we're looking for a frequency, you may never find that frequency because you're going to be limited with your range. But if you just go with the idea that, no, he's already there and he's speaking through people, probably,
Right.
Then I need to interact with people, and I need to siphon some things away. Something's going to matter. They're going to click. But even though it's hard and broken and not always good, it's worth those moments.
Exactly.
Those few moments, I just know that's divine. And so all that 99% of hassle, frustration, anger, okay, yeah. But that one glimpse I got of glory, okay, it's real. It's really real, and it was worth it all. And I'm going to still go after that, because the truth is we're all really fragmented. We're all very distorted and triggered. And so it's almost like a miracle that there's these connections that happen. And so I think we just need to appreciate the fact that, it's a struggle, but it's worth it, and stay with it, stay connecting, especially the people that are not like you. And I think the last thing maybe is just the idea that, focusing again on people not like you is really important, and not to compare yourself with people like you or that you want to be like, because you always find yourself in a lesser position. So don't compare. You just let it be without any judgment of yourself or judgment of the other people. And then you just start focusing on people that are not like you. Go to restaurants, look at your friend network, people that are eccentric, just start hanging out. Homeless people, houseless people, immigrants. It does, race, culture, just doesn't, there's so many anomalies, transgender, this, think about what's the most opposite of you right now. And then go and spend time with those people, learning, not imposing. Because what happens is the more we do that, I'm just reminded of Martin Luther King's quote. He says, in a real sense, all life is interrelated, and all men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. And I feel what happens is we only relate with a certain segment. That's why we're screwed up. Our garment's not really a beautiful garment. And the more colorful that garment, the more tapestry involved and complex it is. You have to look at that background. But if you looked at it's just like you see it, man. It's inescapable. But you have to intentionally go to these other spheres and colors and cultures. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the transcendent.
Yep, those glimpses of glory, like you said, it's infinite glimpses of glory, infinite anomalies, right? If you just go looking for the things, right, you hone in, right, to your ability to tune into other people's frequency, right? Right, instead of just the one frequency, right? Like everybody's heart is playing a song, right? Right. So if you can just tune into their signal, right? Just listen in on like what's happening, and then there's small like, oh, that song, right? It's like, oh, when it hits you, you like make that, oh, right? It's like we can have that, right? So often, right? Just tuning into each other, right? On a real, right, sincere level. That's good.
And also, Dave, what do you got going on right now? What are the ways that people are connecting with you or can reach you or, kind of discover more about the work that you're doing?
Just maybe go to socials, the Instagram account. That's probably the best way. And then I have some experiences, but I'm trying to do more through like Alex and other people, right? I'm trying to help like the Christians of the world, to do it in their network. And so I would say relate to our friend network. We have a group called X Group. It's a global network of leaders, and you can find out about it at 3culture.com. It's a number 3, and that's culture.com. And then some of the experiences I run are on my site, Dave Gibbons .org. You can check that out. But yeah, that's how you can stay connected through me or through the people, our network, which offers different experiences. Because to me, like lyrical opposition is the best thing to go for. Like if you're in San Francisco or as it expands, that to me is like you're experiencing some of me in lyrical opposition. So I say, but it's in your context. So yes. So I would recommend people usually to go to the network that's associated with us in their context.
Okay. Most definitely. Appreciate that. That's 3culture.org or .com?
.com.
3culture.com and DaveGibbons.org.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, people get connected. This is episode 52 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. 52. Week after week. It is June 2nd. It has been tentatively, I could say, probably, what has it been, a year? Has it really?
A year.
Yeah, it's been a full year of us doing this, right? This was, as I've told others, this was started in the most darkest of times and has been one of the most light shedding, sharing experiences And, as it continues and goes on, Dave, I just want to take the time to appreciate you and thank you for sharing with us, giving us space, letting us in, and giving those connecting threads of, who you are, your life, and yeah, leaning into others, right? Servitude, right? It calls into mind something that was told to me at work where, based off of my work style and my preference, that I need to lean into servant leadership. That's the direction I need to lean into. And, for me, that resonates true. This is as much a way to consume content. It's a service. This is us serving people. And, as you serve others, and it shows in the multitude and the frequencies that you hit on all levels, thank you for this time. And definitely will be connected through the X culture group, the X network, as you said. Does that have any reference to, like, I mean, not to get you any type of copyright trademark trouble, but is there any mutant related, kind of symbolism in that?
There is. Yeah.
You know, we all family out here, Sineo.
Yeah. I mean, I got a mask on. What do you think? What do you expect?
Yeah. It's our culture, man. It's the whole X-Men thing. And then, X is in the Greek, it's Chi. And so, so X can stand for destiny, like on a map, but also Chi can stand for Christ.
Them triple double. He's a lyrical one, y'all. As you can see, the double entendres, triple entendres. We here, y'all. Lyrical One's episode 52. Alfluent, any last words for the people out there that are listening?
Oh, just move in gratitude, and as you move forward, as you seek, also just acknowledge and accept what's there. It's a good time to be alive. There's so much change going, and it may seem chaotic at times, but really there's a process to things, and just lean into those folks around you, because they're there exactly for a reason, and each of us is that reason, right? As individuals, we are the reason, right? I am the reason, and you are here. You are the reason that I am here. Yeah, thanks.
Most definitely. So with that, Dave, you're free to stay with us. Last week our guest Art definitely surprised us. So, by all means, this is the outro, and it goes a little something like this.
Dave, we love you. We thank you. Last week, Art Hooker freestyle onto this song.
That was the first time I've ever.
First time anybody ever did anything. He freestyled to this song. He didn't preach too much, but he was on point.
Art Hooker can do that.
Oh, and Dave, when you come back, we got to come back and talk about music. We got to talk about music.
All right, man, I'm out.
See ya. One.